What's up, YouTube? John Torrey back here again. I wanted to talk today a little bit about the seller's experience on Mercari versus eBay. So, I've been selling a lot of sports cards. I've been doing the garage selling and flipping, and you can see my other video where I talk a lot about that. And I talk about the various platforms that you can list your items on, and there's a lot of differences, and there's a lot that depends on the type of item and the pricing and just your willingness to ship and things like that. But I've gotten a lot of questions lately about Mercari. It's pretty new, so I wanted to talk to you about my experience because I'm a pretty big fan, and I've done about equal amount of sales. I've done about 75 sales on Mercari, 75 sales on eBay. So nothing crazy. I'm not this thousands of but kind of the average person on both of these platforms, what I'm seeing and what those differences are. So I just want to start with selling on eBay. Hopefully all of you are familiar with eBay. It's the incumbent platform with the largest audience. That's a really big piece of this, is that eBay really is the place for used goods. That's where people go. It's a household name. It is auction based and buy it now listing structures. Shipping is calculated on your own. So you have to put in weight, height, width, dimensions, all of that stuff. Now, you can use existing listings to sort of copy over. That's something that Mercari doesn't do. I'll get into that a little bit, some of the differences. But it can still be a challenge to figure out how much does my item weigh. And if you miscalculate that, you can, you can end up losing money on some of your deals. So, return policy. Customers can return for any reason within 30 days. Even if you don't accept returns, they can tell you, I don't need a reason, here's this item back. Customers do not have to pay immediately. So that's something they do not need. They can buy something and eBay will send reminders and you can send reminders, but they're not bound to that item. Fees to host a store, so you can pay to have a store. That really allows you to sort of deactivate all of your items at once. And then there's some promotional stuff, and you can have links and things like that. There's sort of a monthly fee for that. Reviewing the buyer and seller is optional. I think the feedback system is incredibly important, but it is optional on this platform. And then you also have the ability to watch items. So that's eBay. Just some of the highlights that I think about and come to mind for me when I think about that platform. So now let's look at Mercari. So I will have some screenshots of Mercari just so you can see what the back end looks like. But again, it's fairly new, and a lot of people are asking me, like, what is it like to sell on there? So it's a new platform. I think it's making waves. I think it's building an audience. I'm starting to see TV commercials. I'm seeing their YouTube ads. So it's definitely growing. And I've been selling on it since about May. It's a buy it now structure. So you list something at a fixed price point. It's very discount heavy. So it's pretty rare that when I list something, someone immediately buys it unless it's a very, very hot item. It's very oriented toward list a little bit higher, discount, do some negotiation back and forth. Shipping is flat rate based on a range of the item weight. Now, this could be an advantage or a disadvantage. So if you have something that weighs 1 pound, it's going to cost you $9.90 through FedEx. But if you have something that's 3 pounds, it also costs you $9.90 through FedEx. But this is great because it gives you a range. It's so much easier to figure out, okay, what do these items weigh, given range? And if I miss it a little bit, it doesn't matter because, Mercari is not going to ding you for it. But if it happens a number of times, then you get in trouble. So if once or twice you sort of miss on the shipping, not a big deal. Their return policy. Customers can cancel an order and receive a refund for a variety of reasons. I have not actually experienced this yet. I'm very lucky. I've had a lot of really wonderful buyers on there. I do believe Mercari refunds the money from the company, so it doesn't actually come back from the seller. So they're really trying to create an experience where there's not a lot of returns. Customers have to pay immediately. So I really like this. If you buy an item, you are paying for that item on the spot. They have a 10% fee. With eBay, it's 10% plus 2.9% with PayPal, which you have to use. Mercari does let you promote up to 10 items per day for free. Now, you do have to discount. You click promote, it discounts, and Mercari does the discounting automatically. I think it's 5 or 10%, and then it'll promote that item and bring it to the top of the listings. Reviewing a buyer and seller is mandatory for the seller to receive his or her payment. So that's pretty key. I really like that. You have to review. It's pretty quick. It sort of prompts you. There's, you can give stars, you can leave comments. It's, in my opinion, a much better user experience than eBay. You can like items and receive notifications. So much like a watch list, you can like items and, sort of get notifications on those. So let's just talk about some eBay pros and cons, because I really want to help you all. If you're listening to this, you probably do some flipping. I'm hoping some of the sports card crew is on here. I chatted, the sports card investor has a Discord channel, and I've gotten some questions. So I hope y'all are on here. But if you saw my other video and you're like, "Ooh, I want to start selling on different platforms," I hope that this adds some value and gives you some ideas of, just some of the pitfalls and some of the things to look out for when deciding which platform to sell on. So with eBay, the pros, I do like the auction-based platform, because that allows for true market value to be determined. If you don't know what something is worth, sports cards are a really great example. You can list an item, you can do an auction for a 5-day period, 3-day period, 7-day, 9-day. I think you have to pay a little bit more. And I just think that that's a really great way to figure out what are people willing to pay. Now, it is a risk. You can put a reserve price, but there's fees. Now, eBay does work a lot of fees into this. If you do a 9-day auction, there's additional fees. If you list over 50 items per month, there's additional fees. If you have a reserve price, there's additional fees. But it can be a really great way for you to gauge that true market value. eBay definitely, I don't know if it has, I'm not going to make the claim that they have the largest audience, but I heard that they have like 1 billion shoppers on this platform. So I think it is if not the biggest, one of the biggest audiences out there. I think definitely bigger than Mercari. They have a feedback and review system. I mean, I do think that it's great, but it's, not always that you have to do that. And I'll admit that I haven't left every single person reviews. Now, you do get a chance to respond to those reviews, and I think that that's really important. They have watch lists and alerts. I think that system's superior to Mercari. They have shipping discounts, which is great. You get usually $1 or $2 off of shipping, which if you're shipping 100 items, like that adds up over time. It does automatically mark items as shipped once you buy and print the label. Cons: buyers do not have to pay immediately. I have 3 items right now, up to about $300, and the buyers just have not paid. And it's been a few days. I've sent invoices and emails. I've had items that just never got paid for, and then I have to relist them. You have to calculate shipping by yourself. So there was a time where I sold some Nerf guns and I totally underestimated the shipping, and it ended up costing me a lot more. So that can be really difficult. You have to go through the process of purchasing a shipping label. This just, if I'm doing a lot of items, and say tonight I sell something on eBay, I have to then, buy a shipping label, go through that process. It's pretty quick, but it's just an extra step or two that, with Mercari, they just email it to you right away. Buyers can return for any reason. I've seen people buy a $1,000 sports card and then just return it for no reason after one bad game. So that could be a good thing for the buyers. I definitely think as a seller, the number one thing that you want to do no matter what is just err on the side of benefiting your customer. Play for the long run. If someone does return an item like that, yes, that sucks, but just remember in the long term, I think if you provide a good customer experience, it'll end up working out for you. But, overall, eBay, it definitely has some weaknesses. I hear a lot of people complain about the fees, but the fees are there because of the audience. I think my biggest gripes are the fact that buyers don't have to pay immediately. But I do like that in the review system, you can respond to negative feedback if you receive it. And the eBay customer support, I think, I didn't list it here, but it is pretty strong. Another con is you can list up to 50 items per month for free. So depending on volume, Mercari doesn't have any limits. So then you start paying, it's 35 cents per listing, but, it's just sort of the concept of it just takes away from my margin. So something to keep in mind. So let's look at Mercari. So it's a growing audience with a strong marketing, platform. And I think it's going to grow its audience. Buyers pay immediately. I just love it because I'm not, again, I just had a bad experience this week where 3 items sold, waiting for them to be paid. They're not listed, so it's missing other potential buyers. So that's a little bit frustrating. Shipping rates are predetermined. I think it's much easier to calculate shipping that way. To be honest, I've listed a lot of items on Mercari only just because I am able to. Just the shipping is just a lot easier. But again, I do lose that audience a little bit, so that's something to account for. But I will say 75 sales on eBay, 75 on Mercari. There's been a lot of times where on Mercari, certain items have sold really quickly, and then on eBay, those same items just sort of sit dormant. I don't have enough data to be able to tell you which items belong on which platform, but my recommendation is really just to post to both, especially when you're really trying to get things moving and get things sold. The shipping label is pre-generated, pre-purchased. It's emailed to you immediately after the sale. You can offer people free shipping, and I have a screenshot of what this looks like. So I have some screenshots of the back end, but you select between 1 and 3 pounds, 0 to 1 pounds, 10 to 30. Like, there's definitely some advantages. If you're shipping heavy items, there's some really good advantages because it's that flat rate fee that Mercari is negotiated with like USPS and FedEx. So the buyer and seller must review each other. So when someone receives my item, I'll get a notification that, hey, the buyer's received the item. If I'm a buyer, I have to then rate the seller so that he or she can receive funds. And then, that facilitates getting more reviews. If it doesn't happen after 3 days, Mercari will automate that. So as a seller, you don't necessarily have to worry, if it's been a week and someone hasn't rated me, so I won't get my money. You have up to 3 days to do that, inspect the item, and give that review. You can promote up to 10 items per day. Again, I do like this, but I think also, it's very discount oriented. If you list something at market price, if it's a hot item, it'll sell. But people on here, they negotiate. They're coming in, they want a deal, they want to feel like they have a deal. So sometimes you need to list a little bit higher and then discount down, and that's just sort of how it goes. There is arbitrage. There's definitely things that sell for more on Mercari than they do on eBay, and less, and vice versa. It's really hard to predict. So again, I think you just have to test it yourself based on what you're selling, and sort of figure out what works for you. So just some of the cons here. Customer service path is weak for Mercari. That's my number one thing. Hold times are always 20 minutes at least. I've had 3 or 4 calls, and it's always been that way. But the people on the other end are super, super nice. You can email them. There's other ways forward, but they haven't really stocked up on customer service yet. It's not as large of an audience on eBay. Now, granted, I am really leaning toward Mercari just because I think the process to list an item is a lot easier. I think the shipping is easier. I like the fact that the buyers have to pay now because, again, I'm running into issues. But, the audience just isn't as big yet. There's also poor policing of sellers who cancel numerous orders. So I've reported a number of sellers both on eBay and Mercari, which I know that seems a little silly, but I think it's important. If you're in this community, if you are buying and selling, it's important to hold each other accountable. That does not mean you go overboard and you're mean to people or you get aggressive with people. I think it just means if you see people scamming on eBay, which I've seen, report them. If you see a seller, I had a seller, I bought an item, and he just kept telling me, like, oh, I'm gonna ship it, I'm gonna ship it, I'm gonna ship it, and a week and a half went by, and I'm sort of waiting for this item, and I could have bought it elsewhere, and it never shipped, and the seller ended up canceling it. So that could be an issue, and that seller had canceled a number of orders. I reported it to Mercari, but they just never did anything. So I think that they need to step that up. There's no way to rectify or respond to negative feedback. I shipped a comic book again, the novice seller, I put cardboard on both sides of it, but I didn't have a backboard. I didn't really know how to ship it. I did the best that I could. I got a 4 out of 5 star, which was totally fine, but I called Mercari and I just said, hey, could I talk to the seller? The item came, it wasn't damaged, it's the only 4 star, and I take this very seriously. There's no path to do that. They have stated that, each buyer and seller's experience is his or her own, and that's just what it is. You can't change that. So in a way, I think that's good because people who know this, like, you really need to think about that feedback that you're leaving. You don't want to give someone a 1 star because they can't change that. You can't change that. So I think that there's a higher level of thoughtfulness that has to go into it. And I've been lucky enough, and I really try to take every opportunity to treat the customer well, so I don't have any issues like that. You can only offer 20% lower than the list price, but you can message users if you want to go lower than that. I do see some people list for astronomical prices, and there's times where I've done that a little bit too, and people can message you and you can negotiate that way. I do see a lot of that happening on the platform. So I just wanted to show, I just have two screenshots here. I really wanted to show on the left here, you can see the shipping backend, because that's what people mostly sort of zero in on. Because I think that really is a challenge when it comes to eBay, because you can sort of use the dimensions and the weight for listed items or have eBay predict it, but they're not always good at it. And I know hopefully some of you are shaking your head like, yeah, they're not, and it can hurt you, because you can have an item that ends up shipping cost you $30 when you plan for 15, and that might be your entire margin on that product. So you can see you have different weights, and there's different fixed rates for that. And there are discounts. So now it is pass through, so it's the buyer pays for that, or you could pay for the shipping. So there are those discounts and pre-negotiated rates. And then I just have a screenshot. I mean, that's my profile, 76 reviews. I have a profile picture. I think that's really important. But you can see the left-hand side what that looks like, my notifications. I do like the action required. So that is when someone buys an item, you will get emailed a shipping label, and it will say, action required. Please print shipping label and ship the item. I do have to go back into the app and, let them know that I actually did ship the item, but I think that that's more accurate and it makes the shoppers more thoughtful. eBay, I'll see people at 9 o'clock print a label. I'll get a notification that says, oh, your item's been shipped. Technically, it hasn't. And there's been times where, it's been shipped, so I don't have to worry about it, and the seller doesn't ship it for a couple of days. So I do like the action required. Mercari does incentivize really well. So my final ruling, I think both platforms have their pluses and minuses. As a seller, I've really favored Mercari over eBay lately. Now, with the sports cards, it's been hit or miss. So for that specific audience, I think eBay is still the place to go. But Mercari, it's coming. I'm telling you right now, it's coming. I think it's a little undervalued just in terms of some of the deals that you can find. And when you're selling, I think that there's less competition right now. So if you are, selling certain items, like it's a less audience, but there's less items. So I think you get a little bit more visibility. I love the fact that it's easier to do the shipping calculations. I have a shipping scale, and I mean, it was $60, right? It's an investment, and that was really because of eBay, because I had a couple deals where I ended up losing money not calculating shipping properly, and that's helped. But just listing on Mercari, I can list really quickly and not have to worry about it. I know if an item's 10 to 30 pounds, like I know if it's going to be in that range, and I can select that instead of having to figure out down to the ounce how much this thing weighs, so I don't get overcharged for shipping. But the buyers pay immediately. I can't, underscore that enough. I just, eBay, it's a problem. If anybody from eBay is watching, you can reach out to me. I just, it really deters me from the platform, because people buy, people bid up. The auction system, I didn't mention this, but a lot of times what happens too is if I'm selling an item and you're selling an item, and someone else is selling an item, that person that may go bid up an item to just increase the value. And so that's why the auction system, I don't know how good eBay is at really tracking that. I also like the fact that Mercari has both parties required for feedback. eBay doesn't do that. The sellers who didn't pay me, I can't leave any feedback, even neutral, and say, hey, I don't know what happened, not a huge deal, but this person didn't pay me. I'm not allowed to do that, and I think that just incentivizes people to just, I don't know why someone would do it, but just to buy an item, and not end up paying. The fees are lower on Mercari. They're 10%. So, I mean, it's a 3% difference. I think, you can list unlimited items. I also like that Feebay, Feebay. I almost called it Feebay, which I know is kind of a funny in the communities. People call it that. But, at the end of the day, eBay is still very useful. This is not bashing on eBay. This is not bashing on people who don't pay. I think that Mercari is doing it a little bit differently. I like what they're doing. I think if you aren't selling on it today, it's definitely worth it. because there's an audience. I don't think the audience overlaps either, in some cases. Now, obviously, in my case, it does, but I am finding people not buying things on eBay and coming on Mercari and buying it. I've also found too, just the people on Mercari. I've just had really good interactions on Mercari. It's a clean interface. The mobile application's pretty strong. It definitely does sort of quit out on itself sometimes when I'm uploading pictures or whatever. But I mean, generally, if you're looking at the two biggest platforms that are going to reach, a national or a global audience, I think it's eBay and Mercari. eBay is still very valuable. It's still sort of the gold standard, but don't sleep on Mercari because I think it's a really great platform and just highly recommend that you download it right now. Again, per my last video, if you want to start taking action and sort of learn the fundamentals of business, practice negotiation, make a little extra money to fund your next vacation or buy a sports card or do whatever that is, Mercari is a great platform to get started on.